I'm Amanda, and I'm from here. I'm from Nova Scotia. And I don't know what else to say to that, except for I have lived an experience of being outside, and I've been struggling with trying to find housing, even though I am in a shelter diversion program now. But I'm thriving.
You are.
I'm doing better.
You are.
I'm getting back on my feet, slowly, surely. This is, so me and somebody else from the ball field have a matching bracelet. This is from somebody from the ball field. It's made out of a pallet. And I think so highly of it, because we lived on pallets, right? It's such an amazing part of the story, and then I can say, this one was from somebody else from the ball field, and same with the ring. I'm always having something on from people who mean something so much to me. I have other jewelry too, it just...
Well, you shared such a tragic time, and it was such in the spotlight. Like the ball field that you were in seemed like it was in the news all the time.
All the time. It was so frustrating.
How long were you there?
I was there for 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah. I was there for 9 months. I left in January, so before they shut it down, I disappeared in January. They just poofed up and fucking left in the nighttime. Nobody knew I was leaving, except for 2 people. Pretty much everybody was upset with me for not saying goodbye, or they were worried, thinking I went back to the woods. When I went into the hotel program, I was pretty done. And then that was the ending of my outside journey. If I've had to do it again, I would.
Yeah, you were talking about that before we started recording, and I've talked to many unhoused, and I've never, what did you learn in that experience where you're just like, you know what, if I had to do that again, I'd be okay with that.
I would. So before I became unhoused, I was already going in the middle of the woods by myself, and I was camping for a couple of weeks at a time. I think 3 weeks at the most before I took a week or two. I left the woods, so I started off in the woods, and I left because of the fires. I had no choice, I had to vacate, which is where I ended up at the ball field. And I met some of the most incredible people that you could ever ask to meet, ever. Of course there was addictions, of course there was, like you said, hoarding and everything. Of course there was ignorant people, but for the most part, walking in there, it was like a family. The feeling was family orientated, and it's we kind of work together to get what our needs. We just work together to get them. And I know with some of the housing support workers that went in there, well, at the beginning they weren't really walking in there, and they were kind of picking and choosing, I guess, and not really giving as much support as what some people needed. I did speak up to a housing support worker on that, and eventually the person was well, does anybody need anything? And then I was talking between me and the other people to the housing support worker, so they had more of a valid kind of conversation with somebody that wasn't going to be, somebody saying they just needed something and then going and getting a fix or whatever. They were actually needing something and willing to use that. I can think of many things we struggled with.
It's a chaotic scene there, is it not?
Yeah, it was chaotic.
There's no, when you were there, any security?
Well, I'd like to say, no, but yes at the same time. If something happened to one of us, you've seen the rest of us go crazy. Mm-hmm. Not saying that we should, but we gotta protect each other. So, part of security, mm-hmm. right? You kind of have a little bit. That's where it felt family orientated. You don't have that in every encampment. Yeah, you don't. Mm-hmm. I can think of a couple of places I've walked into, and it's just more chaotic and unsafe rather than what we went through.
What time period are we talking about that you're at the ball field?
Maybe 2023.
Yeah, so that's 2023. Yeah.
Yeah, we were there for the flood. We were there for the fires. the tents, I got a video of this, actually, me walking out of the gate, inside the gate completely collapsed. I was in my bare feet, and the water was up to here. The whole ball field flooded, and in the middle was up to my knees. It was something that we definitely went through.
Let's talk about getting that information or the announcement that is made that this particular encampment is closing. What was the reality for you? How did it play out?
I left. Like I said, I left before it got shut down. I just poofed and left. So, the pallet shelters. Everybody was promised a pallet shelter. Only 3 people got a pallet shelter.
How many people are we talking about that were promised such a...
We were all promised.
Well, what's the number? Like, how many people towards the end were there at the ballpark?
20 and up.
Okay, 20 and up.
20 and up. Now, the highest amount that I think was in there was in the 50 range. We were pretty up there.
Again,
maybe early 60s. Yeah, maybe early 60s. We were climbing.
Can I ask why the draw? Why were so many people? What was there? Aside from a sense of community, what would prompt someone who's looking for a place to tent? What was drawing them to a ballpark? Because I would think 60 people that you don't know doesn't seem like the best decision.
Well, you have other places that may have seemed unsafe, other encampments. Maybe people were arguing or fighting with other people from, again, other encampments. We did receive support, whether it was through getting pallets, clothing, whatever, but I think at the very beginning or right before that is when we started to climb. So I'm not exactly sure why everybody just kind of started gravitating towards the ball field at the beginning, but eventually it was the support is why I think everybody was coming in there. You're going out in the outdoors, you're struggling, you have storms that come, takes your tent, takes your belongings. Who can afford to get that back under $400 on assistance?
No one.
Right? So, the community of Sackville actually helped quite a bit. And I'm kind of grateful for that. Although I can say that as much as we received a lot of help from the community in Sackville, we received a lot of flack as well. Some of it was really uncalled for. And I also have to say, not just the adults, it was the children. So, kids were becoming a little bit despicable, just coming over, shitting in the porta potty, right in the urinal or on the floor, making a mess, or filling condoms full of urine and throwing it at us.
Are you serious?
Were you there? Yeah.
Fireworks.
Yeah, fireworks. Yeah, we went through some stuff. People just coming in, going through the tents. We didn't tolerate some stuff, so there was minimal needle use. Not many people used syringes in there. And there wasn't too many couples that were in there that were abusing each other, which was kind of nice. We had the odd, but it wasn't over the amount that we would have had way too much drama. There was some, you can't really stop anybody from coming into an encampment. You don't know who's coming in. You don't know their history. I know there was something released on Predator, person in the encampment. We had no idea of that behavior until the end. So we had no knowledge of it. Any drug use type of stuff. You can't stop somebody from doing it. But I know that whatever was going on, at least it was more safer in that environment rather than everybody scavenging everywhere else. And anything to do with anybody selling anything in there. Because I know that there was a couple articles on one or two individuals, and they were targeted saying basically in the articles it said that they were targeting unhoused individuals when it came to drug use. I'd like to make it clear that that person that was in the news was just as homeless as we were, and they were just as ill as anybody could be, which is unfair that they went through that. Absolutely unfair. And in the end, had thought that we all had something to do with whatever they went through, and we didn't. We loved them just like anybody else in our encampment.
How are you continuing to be a positive influence? Because I've met lots of people who have experienced being unhoused, and they're the first people to line up to give back.
I was giving back a lot, and then I realized that I needed to step back and take care of myself. So it was something that I really needed to do. I do have people that call me. You know, if they need support, call me, go ahead. I'll sit there and talk to you out of a crisis if you want. But I need to be mindful that my mental health comes first. I can recall of going through a couple of crisis situations where people got injured that had interfered with a lot of our mental health. Therefore, some of us kind of stick closer together because of anybody who could have got injured. I do know a couple of people in the tiny home area. So, like, over Christmas, I did give back a little bit. I put effort into giving somebody that lives in a tiny home community a little bit of Christmas. I got them a walker and some other gifts. They were struggling with their health. They almost passed away a few times. They were in the hospital in ICU for a few months, and I thought that they deserved something to look forward to, and that was the walker. It was the first year that I had a Christmas in a space that was in my space, basically. First Christmas tree since 2021 in my space, and I had my kids, right? So putting myself first. I do know some people from the encampment are still in house. Some are getting somewhere, some are in house, some are working, some are cleaned up, some are still struggling with drug use. And no matter what they're going through, like I said, can call me at any time and just talk. You know, some people just got a job, but ended up back in a shelter, calling me at 6 o'clock in the morning in a crisis situation, and I'm going to answer the phone. Like, I'm that person that's going to answer the phone. If I don't right away, I'm going to call you back. You know? I feel like when you live in the situation, but you have everything you need and you're watching everybody struggle, you want to do something. And that was one of the things that was an eye-opener when I went outside. That's something that made me thrive living outside. I was very fortunate when I went out there. Like, I did have everything I needed, and I didn't get rid of anything unless it was somebody else. You know, I was pretty happy about that.
We mentioned a few moments ago, I just want you to talk about family that brings joy to you. I know, can you just kind of quickly talk about the process that you're going through, that you continue to go through to try and get back so that your kids are living under the same roof as you?
Housing is a delay. I was saying something about catch-22s for parents. When a parent struggles and they have no choice but to put their children somewhere so that they can ensure the safety of their child while they're getting back on their feet, it's really hard for a parent to get back on their feet in a housing situation, more or less than anything else. I mean, it's like I said, in order to get housing, like through housing, any more than a bachelor, one bedroom, you need your children. But in order to get your children, you need housing. And there's your catch-22. Now, I did find a little bit of a leverage somewheres, and that was through the supplement. So, rental supplement. If you can get approved for rental supplement, there's a possibility that you can get more than a one bedroom if you do see your children and if you do put them on the lease.
Even that process is hard.
That process is ridiculously hard.
It's a weeks-long, month-long process, because we're going through it ourselves. And just to hear back from the agency giving you a case number can be 6 to 8 weeks. I walked my stuff down to the office in November, the 19th of November. Here we are, February. Still haven't heard back from them, because they're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of cases,
Whoa.
which is why this housing crisis that we're dealing with is on the wrong end of it. We're on the backside of it, where if we could get people a livable wage, bring down the cost of living, you wouldn't have so many people outside, because people are deciding where their money's going to go. And we just don't have enough to divvy out to people who are just greedy enough to take every dime that you have.
That's right. And I found that in order to really get into like anything to do with the housing supplement, working with housing support workers was one thing, but getting letters from professionals to support this was the biggest thing that you had to do. So it was not, it was kind of like in between. It wasn't hard, but it wasn't easy, right? Although I could see that other cases could be harder than what I figured out. The hardest part about it is actually finding a place, in general, that isn't, going to accept you for being unhoused. I feel like there's a lot of judgment, even for somebody who's cleaned up.
Just think of the irony of that statement. You're having a hard time getting into a place because you've been unhoused. Like, I don't understand the mentality why people think just because someone has been unfortunate enough to be outside that they're now the scourge of the earth. I just don't understand if we can turn our back on people like that.
I would like to throw out the discouragement I felt when I went to look at a place, and because I have asthmatic and bronchial issues, was told by the landlord because I was coughing, if he would have known I was coughing, I wouldn't be viewing that place. Now, if somebody's unhoused or about to become unhoused and they're ill, how do you expect them to be housed and take care of themselves if people are not willing to show off an apartment? I mean, you could put on a mask so you can stay your distance. I wasn't contagious, I just had a cough. Even calling around and you're coughing, it's hard.
Like we mentioned, there's so many barriers. Not only that, what you're dealing with, but what policy puts in front of you, and just what other humans put in front of you.
Yeah. I'm not in my own place. I am in a hotel shelter diversion program, but I thrived. I didn't want to get kicked out of there, so I started doing better. I do feel that they are lacking, though. I feel like they are lacking big time. I feel like sometimes my needs are met, and most of the time they aren't. I feel right now the only reason why my needs are met in a lot of ways is from a housing support worker, not specifically through the shelter diversion. I do know that I had went through one girl. She wasn't there for very long. She was a very nice girl. But I am the type of person that, again, needs consistency. So I'm not about to open up to anybody. So as much as she was nice and everything, she was also new, meaning she was lacking of experience, which was going to be hard for me to work with. And she didn't stay either, so she has already left, meaning that I had to be shifted to another worker. Unfortunately, there was no worker to be shifted to, so now I'm just all over the place. And then, they want me out of there and into a place, and I'm looking, but I feel like they're going to want me out of there sooner than I find a place, but I'm really looking right now. So here's hoping that something happens by March 1st, April 1st. Is my hope. But I have to say, even moving into your own space, I wish there was more advocates, more people that would help people to transition from outdoors to indoors. The barriers can become ridiculous, I guess. I can recall not feeling that I deserved to sleep in a bed right away.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I slept on the floor right away. It was not. It didn't feel real. To be able to have a sink, whether it was in the bathroom or not, to do dishes in, a microwave to cook your food in.
A bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about safety for a moment.
It feels like you have to have a weapon at all times.
What I was going to ask you, and you can just give me a yes or no, because I've known people who have lost their lives in the 4 years I've been here, being in a tent, whether dying to exposures or being beaten to death. So I'm just wondering, and I can tell by
my expression changed for a second. That's a little bit hard for a second.
I know it's a vicious, lawless environment, and I never thought in my 53 years that I would come to hear stories from people and then find out a few months later that they're not here anymore. So it's devastating to me, and I can only imagine for you who have lived it much more. So I think the point of this documentary is just to show people real stories. Like, people matter. Everyone matters, whether you're inside or outside.
It's just dangerous. I do know there's some people that are no longer here anymore, and no matter what their history is, sometimes people just don't deserve to go through. Not even sometimes. A lot of the time, people don't deserve to go through what they do, especially being outside and safety measures. I know people that have been beaten or stabbed, and that have lost their life, and I feel that is not okay. Not okay. It's just people that want to be safe. You're put in an unsafe situation, and then they allow it. They no longer want the help because they don't want to be in that situation anymore. They, at that point, want to be gone. When other people have to witness somebody going through that stuff in a tent or even other places, the trauma, like, to see somebody that is almost dead ever for anybody, whether outside or inside, shouldn't be a thing. Yeah, sometimes things are touchy. That's a bit of a touchy one. Clearly, there's some sort of trauma history there. Maybe I've seen things that I shouldn't have. And I yeah, that's touchy. That's a touchy one.